welcome back. So as we wrap up the user research portion, like I said in the last video, before we go into crafting solutions, which is our natural inclination, we want to jump right into solution building. But like I mentioned before, we really need to make sure that we're solving the right problem. And really, as a product manager, we could choose any problem to solve. Okay, there's no shortage of problems and there's no shortage of opportunities. But that's why it's so important at the beginning, we understand the mission and vision and we craft a product goal that aligns with that mission and vision. Because we have to make sure that whatever we invest our time in is a good investment. And we can't ensure that unless we bring some data to the table, right? So some of the questions I would be asking internally, let's say I chose to pursue animations, right? Well, there's some high level questions and some lower level questions that I could be asking, but I'll start high level. So how much are the animation features that we have being used, specifically by our free individual users, right? You can use any kind of tracking tool. I mean, you can use amplitude, mix panel, and there's more, right? There's clearly more in-app usage analytics products out there. I personally use Amplitude. You all might be familiar with different ones, but there's things called events, right? If you're familiar with Google Analytics, it kind of tracks it the same way, where when a user does something, it logs an event, and in a lot of these products, you can associate properties to them, which gives you additional information about the user or other things that are going on in the periphery, right? So whether or not they're a paid user, free user, so you can track some of this data. All right, so I would want to know in a given time frame, let's say in the last 6 months, last month, whatever seems reasonable, how many or what percentage of our free users are leveraging animations for their prototypes? Okay, and I would want to track that if we're not tracking that already. If we are tracking it already, I would just go pull the data and figure it out. Okay, and not knowing how many users Figma has or free users they have makes it hard for you to make that call right now. But what's important about documenting these questions, especially if these aren't products that you own, right, or products that from companies that you work for, is as a hiring manager of PMs, they need to know that you know to ask the right questions, right? If you know how to ask the right questions, then data just helps you understand if you should move forward or not, right? There's nothing really mystical about data. You don't look at a big set of data and say, oh man, the data's saying, okay, this may happen, right? Where you reactively look at data and draw some insights from it and make some decisions. But I, idealistically, you would want to leverage data to help inform decisions, but not make decisions, right? So you might hear it talked about as the difference between being data driven and data inspired. And ideally, you would want to be data driven, not data inspired, customer inspired, but data driven. Okay. So with that approach, we're customer inspired by this animations problem, and we're going to be data driven by figuring out if it's a big enough need to help us reach that goal of converting 10% of our free users to paid users. So you can make a hypothesis, right? If 40% of our free users use animations, we believe that 1 out of 4 of those free users would convert to pro for pro level animations, which would give us our 10%. Okay, a hypothesis for a reason. This could be off. This may not happen, but this is the hypothesis that I'm going to go with, right? So the first thing I need to figure out if I was a PM at Figma is what percentage of our free users use animations, okay? Or yeah, what percentage? And if it's 40%, I think we have a shot at hitting our goal by taking on this animations challenge, okay? If it's not, if it's only 10%, then we might need to go back to the drawing board. We may need to go to a different problem, or we may need to go do some more research, right? Because our goal is converting 10%, and we're not just going to build something to build it. We're going to build something that helps solve a problem, but helps us reach our goal of 10% conversion. All right, the next thing is what number of prototypes with animations as compared to number of prototypes created per free user on average. So basically what this means is the first question is just saying like how many or what percentage have ever used animations for their prototypes. And this one is saying like what's that number of prototypes? Basically trying to figure out how often are animations being used. If a free user is doing 5 prototypes in a month, are they only using animations in 1 prototype out of the 5 that they've done? Okay, so this goes to not only reach, but to impact. So if you're familiar with the RICE framework for prioritization, it's more impactful if users are leveraging animations more often, right? 5 out of 5 prototypes that all have animations versus 1 out of 5 prototypes, there's an impact difference there. And so that's what we're trying to figure out is what's the impact. And it's great that we figured out that 40 to 50% of users have ever used animations, but if they've only ever used them once out of 100 prototypes, it may not be that impactful of a thing. So it's just drilling down a level lower to figure out a little past the surface of what actual value we might deliver from this. Okay, so again, these are some of the initial questions I would ask. There's a whole lot more questions I would ask, but if we can validate that the answers to these questions look promising, then that allows us to move forward. Okay. What that looks like and how it moves forward, we'll get to in future sessions. But for now, this is kind of that decision point as a PM to decide, should I go forward or should I go back to the drawing board and do more user research or investigate a different problem that we found that's promising towards our goal. Okay, so with that, we're actually going to jump into crafting solutions under the assumption that we will move forward and that at least 40% of our users use them, they use them often, and we believe that we can get enough of those to convert to a paid user if we give them some advanced level animations. So with that, I'll see you in crafting solutions.